So please for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malkuto, Leolam Vayed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. And the Vahavtah. Vahavtah et Yahovah Elohecha v'kol lavka uvkol nafshaka uvkol me'adecha v'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anoki masaveka hayom alavecha v'shinartam labanecha v'divartam b'shivtecha Beteka, Ulektika, Maderek, Ukshakuka, Ukameka, Ukshartam Leo Alideka, Bahayu Topeka, Ukshartam Amazuzo, Beteka, Visharaka. And you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house, and upon your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah turn his face towards you and give you peace. For the daughters, blessed are you of Yahuwah, my daughter, for you have been kind and generous. Yahuwah is your Elohim, and his people are your people. May all people know of certainty that you are a virtuous daughter. And for the sons, may Yahuwah make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, and may you be a man after Yahuwah's own heart. May you be bold and courageous, leading everyone under your influence in the ways of Yahuwah.
May your mouth speak with wisdom. May your heart meditate with reverence. May your hands do the work of Elohim has given you. May your feet hasten to follow the path that Yahuwah has laid out for your life. May your entire life be fruitful. May Yahuwah's full will for you be accomplished in your life. May the spirit of Yahuwah, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and power, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahuwah be upon you. May the grace of Yeshua HaMashiach, the love of Elohim, and the fellowship of Ruach HaKodesh be upon you now and forever.
Amen. Thanks.
So I have decided that I am going to stop being the one to read the Psalms. So, all you peoples, especially those who are under 30, better be ready answer the call and read them well. I'll try to give you a heads up. Notice. Uh-oh, happening. Am I stepping on something? It's not my beard. It's my beard. Is it my beard? All right, ready? So this is Psalm 34. It's by David when he pretended to be insane before Abimelech. Abimelech, you guys remember that story? Just read it, just talked about it. Who then drove him away, so he left. I will bless Yahuwah at all times. His praise will always be in my mouth. When I boast, it will be about Yahuwah. The humble will hear of it and be glad. Proclaim with me the greatness of Yahuwah. Let us exalt his name together. I sought Yahuwah, and he answered me. He rescued me from everything I feared. They looked to him and grew radiant. Their faces will never blush for shame. This poor man cried. Yahuwah heard and saved him from all his troubles. The angel of Yahuwah, who encamps around those who fear him, delivers them. Taste and see that Yahuwah is good. How blessed are those who take refuge in him. For those who fear him lack nothing. Young lions can be needy. They can go hungry. But those who seek Yahuwah lack nothing good. Come, children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of Yahuwah. Which of you takes pleasure in living? Who wants a long life to see good things? If you do, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceiving talk. Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and go after it. The eyes of Yahuwah watch over the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. But the face of Yahuwah opposes those who do evil, to cut off all memory of them from the earth. The righteous cried out, and Yahuwah heard, and he saved them from all their troubles. Yahuwah is near those with broken hearts. He saved those whose spirit is crushed. The righteous person suffers many evils, but Yahuwah rescues him out of them all. He protects all of his bones. Not one of them gets broken. Evil will kill the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. But Yahuwah redeems his servants. No one who takes refuge in him will be condemned. Amen.
I think part of that static is from the mic being turned too far this way. It's getting a little bit of feedback, I think, maybe, but I'm not sure. But it's not doing it now, so. All right. I'm going to do Olivia's favorite first.
Elohim lanu makaseh
Betzarot, Nimsa Meod, Elohim Lanu Makasevaos. Ezra Betzarot, Nimsa Meod, Elohim Lanu Makasevaos. Ezra Betzarot, Nimsa Meod, Elohim Lanu Makasevaos. Ezra Betzarot, Nimsa Meod, Ezra Betzarot, won't forget the wonder of how you brought deliverance, the exodus of my heart. You found me, you freed me, held back the waters for my release. Oh Yahweh, you're the God who fights for me, Lord of every victory. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You have torn apart the sea, you have led me through the deep. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The cloud by day is a sign that you are with me. The fire by night is the guiding light to my feet. You found me, you freed me, held back the waters for my release. Oh Yahweh, you're the God who fights for me, Lord of every victory. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You have torn apart the sea, you have led me through the deep. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You're the God, you're the God who fights for me, Lord of every victory. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You have torn apart the sea, you have led me through the deep. Hallelujah, hallelujah. 'Cause you stepped into my Egypt, you took me by the hand, you marched me out in freedom into the promised land. And now I will not forget you, God. I'll sing of all you've done. Death is swallowed up forever by the fury of your love. You stepped into my Egypt, you took me by the hand, you marched me out in freedom into the promised land. And now I will not forget you, God. I'll sing his promise of love. I will make you a blessing. Count the stars if you can. You will be a great nation. I will give you this land. I will bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home again. Though you've wandered like strangers to the ends of the earth, I will send you a Savior. I will finish my work. You have no other shepherd. You have no other Lord. Green pastures are waiting in Zion once more. I will bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take you away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home. So we pray for the peace. We look to the east, for the sun rises sudden and fierce. Every prophet and priest, king in the city will look on the one they have pierced. We will mourn for the one we have pierced. But don't fear, oh my daughters, you're sons of Abraham. I will wash you with water. I will offer the lamb. Though your sins were like scarlet, they'll be whiter than snow. I have always been with you. I will never let go. No, I will bring you back home, oh my children. You will no longer roam, lost and alone in the night. There is nothing on earth that could take me away. Once I gather you under my wings, I will bring you all back home. I will bring you all back home again. Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad. Sarah, are you gonna join us on this one?
thought you were going to do it. This one's another one we're still working on, trying to get right, but it's good. So we're gonna do what we can do.
on forever. Your praise goes on forever. Your praise goes on forever. You're right across the heavens to help the ones you love. In your majestic splendor, you lift us up. You lift us up. Our enemies will scatter as we worship at your feet. Oh God of Israel, we lift you up. We lift you up. Oh God of Israel, we lift you up. We're singing holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. We join the host of heaven. Holy, holy. We're singing worthy, worthy, unmatched in power and glory. Eternal song arising. Worthy, worthy. We're singing holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And join the host of heaven. Holy, holy. We're singing worthy, worthy, unmatched in power and glory. Eternal song arising. Worthy, worthy. Holy, You ride across the heavens to help the ones you love. You ride across the heavens to help the ones you love. You ride across the heavens to help the ones you love. In your majestic splendor, you lift us up. You lift us up. Our enemies will scatter as we worship at your feet. Oh God of Israel, we lift us up. You lift us up. You ride across the heavens to help the ones you love. In your majestic splendor, you lift us up. You lift us up. Our enemies will scatter as we worship at your feet. Oh God of Israel, we lift you up. We lift you up. Oh God of Israel, we lift you up. Oh God of Israel, we lift you up.
God, we lift you up. Praise you for everything that you are. We lift you higher than all things, and we praise you, and we exalt you as King and Savior and Master of all things. And we thank you for making us your people and calling us out to be those that would represent you. And we ask that you forgive us where we fail you and make us better, make us grow stronger in our walk with you each day. I pray that you would bless us during this Bible study, that you would guide the words that are spoken, and that you would teach us close about your character more and more. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Test. So, if you have anything important to say today, no, you can say it. Point your voice up into that right there. See a little black dot on the base? No, not that bad. I just mean don't talk over here or over there. Talk right up there.
Would it make a difference from this way or this way?
Yes. That's the whole point.
You're right. Yes.
Test. That's your hitting your arm. Whoa. I sort of do this right every time. I'm supposed to put it like in my shirt.
Yeah, also you can put it down just a little bit. You don't have to have it right.
Well, okay. There.
'Cause then
All right.
you won't touch it.
Shabbat Shalom. How are we? Are we good? Yeah. How was last week without us? Whoa, what's going on here? Oh, there we are. Sweet. How was last week at the Harrises? Did you guys have a good time? I saw some good comments, or at least a good comment about something you guys read or talked about that was worth meditating on. Do I need to scoot over there, Matthew? I think I do.
Yes.
Okay. More than this? I zoomed in too much then, if that's the case.
You're good, but you're just like right up there.
Okay. Zoom. You can, camo's open, you can zoom me out a little bit. Everybody on band, I know there's a couple people, I can't see who's the people that have looked at the Shavuot counting post, but if you're not checking it out, you should. It's good stuff. I put some readings on there, and we talk about things, throw some questions out there. The whole goal, the whole idea of Shavuot is an anticipation. And one of the things I talked about this week in one of my posts on band was that, the anticipation. What would it have been like? Their whole entire life, Shavuot would have just been something that they did. Oh, yeah, okay. It's the 30th day of the counting of the Omer, right? But this year, the year that Yeshua died and rose again and walked the earth for a little while, met up with the disciples a couple times, I'm pretty sure the anticipation would have been pretty large. There would have been a bit of anxiety on their part of, wow, the whole earth turned black, and there was a giant earthquake on Passover, and he died at the same time the Passover lambs were dying. He rose from the grave at the same time the priests were getting ready to offer the wave offering. So in their minds, when he told them, go to Jerusalem and wait, right? I'm pretty sure they were thinking, what's going to happen on the 50th day, right? That's where we get the word Pentecost in Greek, right? Shavuot is as a term for the plural for sevens in Hebrew. What's going to be happening? Anyways, that's what's been going on band this week, the counting of the Omer. I literally use the Karaite version of how to count the weeks and the days, and I post it on band. It's good stuff, right? It's a little, most days it's a little, what do you call it? Devotional. There you go, devotional. All right, today, we ready for today? I really miss when we don't get to do this, by the way. And last week, so we go to Oklahoma to visit my uncle, okay? And we get there, and I'm telling my wife and our friends, we're going to go to HFF, all right? Hebraic Family Fellowship. The pastors have all been here to Mississippi, to our home, to speak to us. Ephraim, Judah, Daniel Musson, Chris Frankie, right? And I was like, man, I'm going to surprise them. I'm going to show up, and then I'm going to, it's going to be great. I'm going to hang out. And we get to the church, and I knew right away something wasn't right because there was a bunch of young people running around. I'm not saying they don't have youth, but it was like high school, college-age kids, and none of them looked messianic. I didn't see a Zeke one. And then the sheriff that was there, which I don't know why the sheriff was there at this church, was like, "Oh yeah, no, they're doing it at a different location." And I knew in the back of my mind, wait, they don't do church at a different location. So of course I went and looked, and Brandy went and looked, and it said online only. And I was like, Chris, Daniel. It's like, Chris, Daniel, Ephraim. Yo, fellas, I'm in town. What's up? They were nowhere to be found. But as Jared said during the announcements, I'm going to repeat one more time, June 3rd to the 5th. It's going to be a combination Messiah meeting / Shavuot event. So we don't count Shavuot the same way that the Messiah meetings ministry and Lion and Lamb ministry do. We disagree, but that's okay, because I'm down with celebrating the whole idea of what Shavuot's about 2 times in a row, one weekend right after the other. And I'm also really down to fellowship with these guys because they're good people who love God and love his word. And I'm looking forward to it. So like Jared said, if you want to go, there are Airbnb is slim, but Verbo has a lot of offerings for houses. And there's hotels and stuff like that. I know it's tough. It's a 9-hour drive. And we're willing to do it, suffer through it, to enjoy it. All right? But yeah, that's where we were last weekend, Norman, Oklahoma, just to visit my uncle because I wasn't able to go to HFF. All right, here we go. The title, the theme for today. Anybody that can read this, get the pun of the slide. Can everybody read the title and the subtitle? It is the Eagles song, but I changed the lyrics a little bit. We have to find the passage back to the place he was before. Instead of, I have to find the passage back to the place I was before, the title is, we have to find the passage back to the place he was before. So, what song is that? Hotel California. That's that. No, so. And I also changed the place. I didn't put the Hotel California on there. Guess what hotel this is? Anybody recognize it that's been there before? It's not the Hotel David, this is the Hotel Jerusalem. So now do you get the whole gist of my slide, right? Instead of Hotel California, nobody wants to go there, right? They ain't know where I'm trying to get back to. Hey, we have to find the passage back to the place he was before, and you'll see that theme throughout our discussion today. All right, so this is not. Every time I say this, I regret saying it. It's not gonna be a long day today. All right, everybody. I'm looking. Where's the comments? Avery's even smirking at this point. Even he's paying attention. Where are our visitors at? Listen, Sissy, Nate. I promise you, it's not going to be that long. Only twice as long as your normal Sunday service, okay? I'll make sure it's not 3 times. Listen, shh, you be quiet over there. All right, so the very first thing we want to talk about with Genesis chapter 38, or 33. Notice, I'm reusing, not the same picture, but a different picture of the stairway to heaven. Okay? So, yeah, exactly. Another rock song, okay? You'll see why. We'll talk about why shortly, but this is definitely with the theme of today. I'll go ahead and steal my own thunder. We have to find the passage back to the place he was before. This is definitely with that theme, and our portion today is definitely also part of it is with that theme. But the majority of our passage this week is the story of Dinah. All right? Who knows the story of Dinah? First of all, who did their reading? Sorry, my beard is bothering me. I'm going to try not to itch my nose, but it's killing me. What? No, it's good. Oh, the brush ain't going to help. So Dinah, what's the story of Dinah? First of all, let me ask the question again. Who did the reading? Go ahead, Mittens. I know. At least 2 of you. Good. Teenagers. I know. I'm going to start forcing the issue. Ooh, groundings and forcing Bible readings. I know people out there online are being like, oh, that's so mean. Well,
I don't remember reading this 32, talking about it in here.
yeah, they read it last week. Yeah, last week. We missed it for taking a break. All right. So Genesis 32, we have, and 33 even, we have the reuniting of Jacob and Esau. All right. And that ends in our portion here, where you have in 33:18, you find right after Jacob has a conversation with Esau, right? It says in verse 18, starting our portion, and Jacob came safe to the city of Shechem, which was in the land of Canaan, when he was coming from Padan Aram and camped in front of the city. And he bought the section of field in which he pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, father of Shechem, for 100 kesita. And he set up an altar there and called it El, God of Israel. And then very first verse of chapter 34 is and Dinah. Okay, so Dinah is Leah's daughter. She is the sister of Simeon and Levi. And basically, the majority of our portion is about her and sexual relations with the man that we just read about, Hamor's son, Shechem, his sexual relationship with Dinah. Now, how many of you out there have, whenever this passage has been read in the past, all of us in Torah cycles, have read that it's the rape of Dinah? I know I'm not supposed to say that word on YouTube. Hopefully we don't get canceled out. Has anybody else been taught that she was getting forced to have sex with this prince of this land? Anybody? Bill, you have? Mittens? No? You never heard that before? Or have you ever read it like that before? Yeah? Okay, good. So I don't mean good like good, oh my goodness, it's a terrible, horrible thing to think of. But let me offer something. The reason I have this is a commentary for the Torah, right? I have it for a purpose and a reason. Okay? Might be an inaccurate way to look at it. I'm not saying it is, but it might be, right? And here's why. If you look in verse 2, when it says he took her, lay with her, and degraded her, right? A lot of times this story is considered that he forced sex on her. Some people even put a heading over it. Some Bibles even put a heading over it called the rape of Dinah, right? Some old Bibles do. But there's a very important piece in the language here that is often overlooked. The nature of the act is actually not clear from the wording. There's three key terms here: took, lay, and degraded. They appear to suggest force, but all three are used without such a meaning in the Torah's laws concerning marriage and rape. So to take, right, lakah, a woman is used even, to take a woman is used even to mean marriage. That's Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13. And to lie with, sakab, to lie with, sakab is also 22:13, right? And to degrade are both used in the case that is specifically ruled not to be rape. Sorry, that's Deuteronomy chapter 22, 23 through 24. So the phrase that is missing from here, that is also in Deuteronomy chapter 22, is he took hold of her. And we get to the story, if you look at the story of Ammon and Tamar, which we'll get there later, I'm not going to go there today, but all of the phrases including took hold of her is included in that story, and it definitely specifically says that Ammon took her, like, besides that language, there's other language that says he took her against her will. All right? She was not willing. So, now, if this passage means he shamed her because he had sex with her before she was married, right? He lied with her, and he took her, not took hold of her, then there's a potential this was not forced sexual relationships. All right? Sexual relationship. And if you take that, missing this whole phrase, to take hold of her. Now you take that, you go back, and you think about how the rest of chapter 34 reads. It reads, even with Simeon and Levi, they don't say, they're not talking about in sense of he violated her as like he raped her. And now ask yourself the question, why was Jacob not ready to go and get these men and kill them all? And why was he not so happy about the fact at the end, what does Simeon and Levi do? They kill all these men. They actually trick them. They trick them, and they have these men, think about this for a second, all of us grown folks and young people, you can imagine this with me. Shechem is in love, totally in love with Dinah. And his father and himself approach Jacob and say, can I please have her for a wife? Simeon and Levi tell them, only if you can't be a part of our people, the only way you can be a part of our people is if you go get circumcised, you and all your men. So the king of this land, Hamor, and his son Shechem go into their people and say, all of us grown men must get circumcised right now because I really love Dinah. Okay? They do this. They get circumcised. On the third day, when they're the sorest, when they're the most messed up and in pain, Simeon and Levi and the rest of the brothers go in and kill these men, take their land, and take their families and their children. What is Jacob's response? Jacob's response is, you fools are a reproach to me. Like, I cannot believe you've done this. And even worse, when we get down the line to the blessing of Simeon and Levi, there's re-mention of this event in Jacob's blessing, and those are the two tribes that end up with no land. Now, Levi, for other reasons later on, ends up serving, being considered the one to do the temple service, right? His whole lineage and family, and for a good reason. I'm just saying, on Jacob's deathbed, Levi and Simeon did not leave on a good note. So why? Ask yourself why. What's the Torah say about a man and a woman laying together before marriage consensually? Either one of them are committed to anyone else. What does it say when a man takes a woman and lay with her? Boom. Well, we've talked about this before. They're to marry. He's supposed to give the bride price, right? They're married, right? So if Dinah was not raped, then that would be why Jacob was not angry and was angry at Simeon and Levi. Different perspective than I've heard, and I think most people have heard.
So you're saying if she had been raped, then he wouldn't have been mad at his sons?
No. As a matter of fact, if she would have been raped, I believe there would have been a unity in the sense of, I believe, again, a unity in the sense of we need his life, right? A lot of times people can take this story and think about it. Right now you take this story, and if you think that she was raped, man, I keep wanting to not say that word. If you think that that's the case, then you're going to look at Jacob as weak and silly, right? But later on, like I said, even in his blessing, Simeon and Levi they're looked down negative because of this one event. So, different perspective. Yes, ma'am.
Why did this king settle for talking to the sons and not Jacob himself?
That's a good question. Let's take a look at that. Because I don't believe the key is that Jacob knew beforehand, okay, that it had happened. Right? And that's what it says right there in verse 5.
And I think also you need to consider that possibly in that time frame, women were not near about on the same level as we think of nowadays, where the woman really has a whole lot of choice about who she marries. It's more up to the father and the brothers and
Yeah.
fathers give their daughters away, and she may not have been consenting, but, you know, just kind of, not opposing it as much as she should have.
Right.
The guy actually loved her, but then again, it was not, and that's another thing for us. We always are ready to go with what society around us is, but Israel had a different standard than what the other worlds did. The other people, even though they were among those people, they had different standards. And what the brothers said was true. They had to be circumcised or they wouldn't be part of their people. But it was the anger that the father saw, the deception to kill them. They set out like premeditation and murder from the beginning. That we're going to get our revenge on this.
That's right.
Vengeance belongs to the father; it doesn't belong to the man. But
Right, and there's a lot of questions, even in what, like you said too. What if? And I'm not. So at this point, right, we have a family who we are not entirely 100% on how much Torah did they have.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? How much instruction on day-to-day living did they have? How much specifics did they have, right? And so, other than, like you mentioned, and this story mentions circumcision, right? They definitely knew that, right? This is what we're part of this covenant, this land covenant. All these blessings that the Father is going to give us is based off of us, you know, having a sign in our very body of that covenant. So another thing that just, you know, again, I'm not going there. It's just something I'm going to ponder on and I'm going to think about is, you know, and I'm going to definitely, as we get further in, I'm going to kind of skip ahead. I'm going to read the blessing myself. I read a little bit of it today, but I'm going to kind of meditate on that blessing given to Simeon and Levi. Is there a concept or an idea here? We see the Father's not quite present in this story specifically, meaning God doesn't say anything entirely here. Is there a potential that this was supposed to be a good relationship, right? And I know I'm contrasting what you said. They definitely did not live the right way. We know many generations later, they're horrible, right? Like they've gone.
in their society, they were probably required checking, even though he was the king's son or whatever. They still would require that he go to the father first.
That's
You
right.
do this thing and then afterwards say, "Hey, I want her as wife."
That's right.
You approach it before all that happens, and he, you know, either society, he bypassed protocol.
Right.
Thought is that,
Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, Olivia.
Torah, if it wasn't rape, then if they slept together, he would have to go to the father and ask for his blessing. And if the father said no, he did not get his
That's right.
wife.
That's right.
He was just going to have to go home wifeless. But if she was raped according to Torah, he was commanded and bound to take her as a wife and keep her and treat her well for the rest of her days.
That's right.
And so there's no death penalty in Torah for rape of a virgin. So her brothers actually went against Torah by killing him because there was no just murder for rape. So they carried out justice in a wrong anti-Torah.
So there is, though. You got to be careful when you say that because there is, right?
Rape of a betrothed woman is death penalty.
I don't think it says betrothed woman in the Torah. I think it's just literally if a woman, right, is forcibly taken by a man. Remember, it's the whole point of like if they have sex and she doesn't scream out, right?
Yeah, but that's because she's betrothed. Rape of a virgin, when it specifically says rape of a woman not betrothed, he has to take her as his wife.
Right. Again, I think that, I see, that's why I hate that word. I don't believe that there in Torah, right, specifically what you're talking about, it's definitely saying, it's not,
It is a not, I believe so.
yeah, it's not saying rape there. I think it's just saying, again, right, there's a different take hold of her versus take her, right? There's two different concepts. And you can see consistently, and I looked at it today, this morning, consistently, the take hold of her is bad, the take her is okay, unless there's other circumstance situations like we're talking about here. The key here, though, that we're discussing, we're trying to get at, right? Because even then, like we said, we don't know the specifics of Torah, of what they have right here, right? But I agree with you regardless, something is not right with what Simeon and Levi did and the way they did it.
Well, also, you got to look at Shechem too. But,
oh, yeah, there's definitely something not right with the way Shechem handled himself.
and here's another thing. He may have taken her without her consent, but the fact that she was taken, she's defiled. She's not
Degraded. It does say degraded.
Degraded now.
Yep.
So now we have to deal with the situation from this standpoint, and he feels like, now I can say, give her to me because, ain't nobody else going to want her over here. I've already taken her. She's
Right.
not a virgin anymore.
Right.
She's mine. And,
Yeah.
and that
I would.
that would bring up the anger in the brothers also.
That's right. I would go so far as to say, though, I'm not disagreeing with that being a potential, but I would go so far as to say the language at which he longs for your daughter, right? I don't think that would have been his attitude, is what I'm saying. And then here's another interesting point we haven't even gotten to yet. Going back to Becky's question, right? Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter, and his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob kept quiet until they came. All right? And then Hamor, Shechem's father, went out to Jacob to speak with him, and Jacob's sons came from the field where they heard, and the men were pained, and they were very furious, for he had done a foolhardy thing among Israel to lie with Jacob's daughter, and such a thing is not done. And Hamor spoke with them, saying, Shechem, my son, his soul longs for your daughter. Give her to him as a wife, and marry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for you, and live with us. And in the land the land will be before you. Live and go around in it, and take possession in it. And Shechem said to her father and to her brothers. So it says he said it to both of them. Right? So he's having a conversation with the whole family. Now, and Jacob's sons answered and said, with deception as they spoke, because he had defiled. And then they basically trick him into getting circumcised so that they'll be in pain on purpose, and they can go and kill him. Right? So he does talk to Jacob. Jacob's just not a part of Becky. He's not a part of the deception piece. Right? It's just the sons who did that. And they're listening to the sons. And that's interesting, too. You keep reading, right? You get this, and that's what I was saying earlier. It's crazy that Shechem and Hamor are like, and that's another reason why it's kind of like he really was into this girl big time. The fact that they're offering freely the land, they want to exchange daughters for daughters, right? And then the fact that all these men got circumcised as grown men, right? That's crazy. That feels like, yeah, that part I definitely agree with.
Maybe they just figured they had to, or else, Jacob's people would kill him, so they had to act like.
Well, but
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think that's it though, because when in verse 30 and stuff, when Jacob is talking to Simeon and Levi, he's concerned. He says, "My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed." So that they were it's the opposite. Like Shechem, and they were the powerful force, but also too, Jacob agreed to everything and had honored it. Because if you look, it says they killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house. So they were circumcised, and they had given her to him.
Yep.
And she was in his house living, and so the agreement had already taken place, and had been honored by both families.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think sometimes we can look at this story too quick, too fast, and have too strong of opinions one way or the other. I really feel like, I looked at it, I purposely, just for our sake, I looked at it a different way this time, and I think, I'm not saying that Hamor and Shechem and their town and their people aren't messed up, right? Canaanites, wrong, right? Obviously, they're not God's, chosen people. But at the same time, you got to really, really pay attention to this piece, and we'll come back to it. We'll revisit it. Of Simeon and Levi, it's not looked upon as a good thing here and later. And this is definitely one of those, well, what if? We could do that all day long. What if, right? Type deal.
I think not seeing the full picture. I think that that's kind of maybe intentional, but at least we know that we don't fully grasp the historical context, because this was a really, really ancient period. And
Yeah.
these
Old
writings
time.
These writings are the best snapshot we have of what that culture was like.
That's right.
And there's just a lot of gaps in our knowledge on what it could have had, you know, what the entire scenario was, but also just how that culture was. And I think because of those missing pieces, we got to look at the parts that we do have, certain things like that. We got to focus on the information that we do have. You know what I mean? To see what God's wanting us to see from the story, or how it's relevant to other portions of Scripture. You know, and things like that. Like, for example, you mentioned something about the tribe not being the one, or is it Simeon? I think that didn't get a land allotment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's a significance there, maybe, for why this story is even getting.
Going back to what Bill said, right? Even Bill was talking about vengeance being the Lord's and not theirs, and this is not a commanded decree type thing, and it says deception, and Jacob's not happy with it, and those kind of things. So
there's definitely good lessons to be learned from it that we can easily take. You know.
and I would on that note, when we talk about applicability and good lessons, and kind of what we're all sort of talking about here, especially with this story, is, you know, vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. But, like, have you ever heard of people isolating certain scriptures, right, as Christians especially, and using that as an excuse to go kill someone, right? It happens. And boy, when it does, one Christian versus 100 other people, and all Christians are out to kill everybody. But anyways, you guys know we're never going to get a fair shake. But the point is that 9 times out of 10, 100% of the time, probably, there is no true biblical precedence, and they just use it to be like Simeon and Levi, right? I'm going to go, kill this whole entire group of people without God's say-so or blessing, right? So that could very well be a very applicable point of don't grab Scripture for anything, especially not, I'm going to go kill these people over here because that's what Joshua did, when he came into the land of Canaan. They're Canaanites. It's like, whoa, you were a Canaanite too. Chill out. That's not how it works anymore. All right. So, chapter 25. We just get a couple verses into chapter 25. There are 8 of them, but they're actually really, really interesting, right? Specifically to our theme today, God tells Jacob where the passage is to get back to where he was and is. So God says, go back and live in Bethel, where I had met you before, where God revealed himself to you. You got a cleansing in these 8 chapters, where Jacob specifically tells his family, give me all your idols. Get rid of all of them. They change clothes. He says, change clothes. Get cleaned up. There's a cleansing. And then as they go and they do this, Jacob takes their stuff and he buries it. They go towards Bethel, and the scripture specifically says as they go, the land was in trouble around them. The Father protected them. Like, so if somebody wanted to attack them, they were too scared and anxious and messed up. So they had their protection, and then they get to Bethel and they worship. I've heard, so the applicability to these 8 verses and to this story of getting to Bethel with God specifically telling him to do so, cleansing themselves as they go, the protection that they had, and the worship. This could not help but be reminded of messages I've heard, at least 3 or 4 times. Every time I think I was very, very much resonated, and that is, you guys know I share my testimony, often with people. Something I learned a long time ago was make a memorial, right? Stack your stones, so to speak. Build that altar. And again, not in the high places, but where God was and he told you to, in the sense of there's moments and places in my life that I have to look back on a regular basis, especially when I'm not in the best of ways now, to recall and to remember that time that I encountered God, all right? And I'm not saying I saw a stairway to heaven or I heard the audible voice of God, but I have memorials of where I know it was God. Nolan?
He had all those women that he took from the other family. They had the idols and stuff, correct? Because, Israel didn't have no idols. So he took the gold and the earlobes and all that stuff and buried it in the ground.
Well, hold on, Nolan.
Is that what they had?
Hold on a second.
I'm asking.
Now, meaning the women that they took from the city of Shechem? Yeah. So of course they would have idols, but you can't count even Rachel out on this, because remember what she did. She hid her family's idol, and Laban never found it, and Jacob never found it.
He stole it.
Yep. And I guarantee you, half of Jacob's family, including the ones that came from Laban's house, messed around with some stuff. So that's why I was saying earlier, when we read this story, you got to realize this is not the Torah washed, even 10 Commandment gotten group of Israel. They're obeying. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, Jacob obeyed. And listen, here's the deal. There's not really a whole lot of proof to us in this passage, like J.R. was saying earlier, about the specifics, kind of like what you're talking about. But the key thing, and God, you don't see instruction. You don't see God say, get rid of these idols, right? But somewhere along the line, from Abraham down to Jacob, right? And that's probably why Isaac was not cool with Esau getting these other women, right? From one place, but they were okay for finding a wife from another place, right? It's because they had enough sense and enough instruction to understand this is bad, right? No matter where it came from. But I'm not giving Jacob's family a pass, though. I'm not willing to do it. Sorry, Nolan. Yes, ma'am.
So many times, the people who are supposed to be Torah observant are corrupted. Is that why Noah, Elisha, why they were mentioned so special? Because they truly, truly sought after God. And David.
Okay, well, man, you did it. You brought it up, and we're actually about to go there. We're really about to go there, so hold on to that thought, but I will say this. Think about David. Couldn't build a temple because he had too much blood on his hands, and killed a man because he got his wife pregnant who was totally loyal to him, put him on the front line so that he would end up dying so that he could cover up his sin and then have the woman also. So the man after God's own heart, who I agree with you, he wrote Psalm 119. He loved the Torah. You understand what I'm saying? Now I ain't got any bones to pick with Elisha, and the only thing we can say about Noah was he got drunk, right? Right? But and again, that's not necessarily anti-Torah.
Daniel, and then you have Joseph.
So Daniel would be. That's right. Daniel would definitely. Elisha. Yeah, but look what Jacob's doing right here. What we just got through with, right? Jacob's not. He's like, get rid of these idols. Like, I know this is not right, and we're going to the one true God's place where He told me to go. I'm going back to His place. You know what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong. You're right. There's a rough road here, but Jacob himself, we don't find doing anything with idols. It's just, yeah, his wife, his family. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and think about it. It all depends on where you come from. Jacob could arguably be said to, because he didn't upset his parents, right? As weak as he is and some stupid decisions he makes along the way, potentially you can find some negative, he could arguably be a pretty straightforward guy, right? Now, his sons, not so much, right? We got the story of Judah and Tamar. We got the story of, Joseph, right? The whole ordeal. And then you can ask yourself the whole, how righteous was Joseph, right? Again, representation and in word, very much so. But those are good points to bring up, good things to think about. That's right. That's right. That's right.
We're all human.
That's right.
I think you can make the argument too that even if you weren't literally carving out statues and praying to them and stuff, if you're serving yourself in a certain capacity, beyond what is appropriate or whatever, I don't know how to say it, but you can consider serving, having other things as idolatry, and you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to say?
All right, so
idolatry extends beyond just
here
having the physical idol.
I agree, and we're actually again, you guys are all over what we're about to talk about. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, you got the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, the lust of the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Those are within the person. But you start worshiping an idol, you're bringing demons into the picture. Is that where there's a line crossed that brings a power into the picture that just takes it to a whole different level?
That is a good question.
You're going beyond sexual lust, gluttony. You've got now a demon. Like,
So-
who was it that they worshipped that was in the reading? They took them to the temple of, no, it was in the book I was reading, to the temple of Dagon. And they
Yeah,
cut the guy's head
it's
off.
yeah, it's in this one. It's
So now you're
it's
getting
repeated here in
of
Chronicles chapter
demonic
10.
entities.
So-
You're bringing a whole new supernatural power into the picture.
Are you? Hey, Brandon. Hey, can you hear the room mic real good? Because I just need to know how much I want to repeat. Yeah. So absolutely, when we start talking about like differences in, hey, I'm sinning. I'm even being some way idolatrous in the sense that I'm giving something in my life way more place than I'm giving the Father, right? Like
Like
and that
David wasn't where he was supposed to be. His eyes saw what he should never saw, and
on the top of
he
the
wasn't thinking right.
Yep.
He did something stupid, but he wasn't worshiping Dagon.
I want us to, okay, true. I want us to wait though, because I don't want to steal our thunder from the future, because we're talking way too much about that rooftop and the results of it. It's coming. We're gonna get into it. But, and I mean today, it's coming in the future. But I want to just address your question. The question is, yes, I definitely have always believed it's like with anything. There is a spiritual application to everything we do. Now, I'm not trying to say look for the demons and the angels in everything we do, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that the reason why the Father was so very, very much like, don't do what they do and say you do it unto me, was because they did horrible, horrible things, right? And so that made him upset. So he didn't say there that it was because of demonic power, but later on we find, even in the New Testament, right, specifically in the apostolic writings, we find the sense of we start to see the picture, right, especially when it says, don't even come near or touch anything close to witchcraft, right? That's in the Torah, right? You find Simon the sorcerer in the book of Acts. We find the woman, the soothsayer, the woman with the demon that Paul gets annoyed with and cast out, right? Like yes, I definitely would agree with you. There is a line crossed, right, when you start worshiping other gods, specifically by names, and yes, demonic influences are all there. What I want to be careful with, though, is I want to recognize that I have seen, and multiple times in my life, right, people who worship the worst, right, including believe that they were worshiping and obeying Satan himself, get redeemed, right? And so, right, but even those people would say, not being ooky and spooky, right, they would tell you, like, they're probably the loudest voices in my life that I've ever heard who were like, man, watch out what you bring into your home, right? You know what I'm saying? So totally agree, right? There's a different place for David's adultery than there is for somebody going and worshiping Dagon, right? Right? I agree with that. Now, we're actually going to deal with that right now, okay? I've said this 3 times now. All right, so here we are. We're in part 2, right? We moved from Torah, we're moving to Chronicles, okay? In 1 Chronicles 8 through 10, we start to get done with the lineages. Right, there's some interesting repeat stuff, and the reason why there's some repeat stuff is because the chronicler is taking some things he said before about these lineages, and he's talking about, in chapter 8, people who were a part of that line. These are the ones specifically who came after the exile and lived in Jerusalem, right? So he's talking about like the tribe of Benjamin and some of those other things. Then we get in chapter 9, right? We get some interesting, like, if you see my picture here, this is the old English version of the Tabernacle of David, right? Okay. They're all playing instruments, and I'm guessing that's King David himself there, right? And they're offering up incense with this weird-looking knight in the background. He must be one of the gatekeepers, right? And then you got all these people singing, dressed like monks, not like priests, right? But hey, they tried to get the best image they could out to the folks, right? Right, Olivia? That's right, right? Okay. So this is where we start to get a glimpse, and that's the reason why I use this picture. We're starting to get a glimpse of something I told you we're going to talk about here because it's all throughout Chronicles and Kings, right? And that is the Tabernacle of David. And one of the cool things here we see is you got the gatekeepers who are part of the temple service, right? And then you have the singers. And the singers, right? The singers and the pickers, like this old Pentecostal pastor used to say when he teach on this, he'd be like, the singers and the pickers, right? They were on a rotation. 12 in, 12 off. 12 in, 12 off. Anyways, chapter 9, verse 33, the singers stayed in a place called the Peturum, which means, that word actually means an exempt ones. So they stayed in a special hall because they were exempt from temple service, because it says also here that they were busy day and night with their singing. So like, whenever you think to yourself, right, whether you're Church of Christ and you don't play an instrument, right, let's just talk about the singers then. Let's talk about the a cappella, right? These people, day and night for years, spent time worshiping before Yahuwah, all right? And now we know, not just from this picture, but from the scriptures, you also have the musicians, right? And this we're going to address again, but I really want you to get a picture of something. David turned the volume up. And not only that, but he doesn't just have singers. He has people who sit and daily just say praises to the Father, right? I want, like I've been saying now 3 times, I was about to address this issue. I want you to really think about what's going on here with David. All right? Because chapter 10, what's wrong? 1 Chronicles 9. 1 Chronicles 8 through 10. But 9 is where I was just focused on. 9 verse 33 is where it talks about the singer stayed in the Peturum. And what that word means is exempt ones. And it also says, I think in that same verse or around there, it talks about the day and night. They were busy and occupied with singing day and night. So chapter 10 is a rehash of Saul's death, and it's not much different than what we've already read. The only difference we find is that here it talks about burying his bones. In the previous recant of the men going and getting his bones from the Philistines and from the temple of Dagon, Becky, right? They go to get them from the Philistines as they put them on display. They hide, they sneak in, they're like commandos. They get Jonathan, they get their bodies. It actually says they burn their bodies. And this is a big deal for Jewish custom and tradition. And if you read even the Tanakh, there's a disagreement. If you read the commentary of the Chumash, there's a disagreement between 2 rabbis. One is like, that's just them talking about burning their stuff and then burying their bones. But another rabbi is like, no, their bodies were decaying and horrible and nasty, and they actually burned their bodies and buried their bones, right? So there's like this disagreement on it was okay to burn them. Their bones were still there. They buried their bones. It's not a big deal. That's the disagreement between the rabbis. I'm not really into all that. I'm just telling you that's the difference between this rehash of Saul's death and the last thing we read. Now, what I really want us to think about, we're just starting to just get the tip of the iceberg for who the worshipfulness, the true worshipfulness of King David. But let's go back to when Saul was just starting out. And if we were to read again what we've read in 1 Samuel, and understanding what we know about those 2 people, the tragedy of Saul, the potential that he had, if we need to take something away from his death one more time, in his story, what is the biggest difference between Saul and David? And here, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to think about this question in a manner or in the light of, well, obviously David did this, Saul did this. I'm saying, what is the possible thing, probably the most obvious thing that we might miss, that was different between Saul and David in the very get-go, from the very beginning, even when Saul is getting chosen by the Father? That's a very good point, and I don't disagree with you, but I believe David's humility came from where I'm trying to get this answer from.
David trusted and had faith. Where Saul
David trusted and had faith.
sometimes.
Okay? I agree with you 100%. That is also true. He trusted and had faith, and you can see Saul did in the beginning at times, but you can see where he started to depend on natural things. No, not physical stature.
What was Saul's job? What was that position in life before?
So before he was just a big man, probably a part of the army. I don't think it really specifically says, but he might have just been an agrarian. Yeah, it's a agrarian lifestyle. They farmed.
So he was a farmer.
That's right. David was a shepherd, but doesn't mean that his family didn't farm too. It's just David's job was to keep after the sheep. Think about it. Is it
A lot of difference in a soldier and a sheep tender here.
Yeah, but Saul started out as a farmer.
What?
Saul started out as a farmer, though.
Fine. I like to eat strawberries too.
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about, Nolan.
Are you speaking of?
So I'm gonna back up a little bit. I'm gonna go back to Bill's humility. I'm gonna go back to Sarah's talking about he obviously continued to have faith when you see Saul's faith waver. This is the key. This is the key. What was the source of those things? I know it's easy for us to be like, man, David was just born with it.
David went through so many different things.
Okay.
David had been the littlest, the youngest.
That's right.
He had to learn how to find his way. He taking care of sheep.
I would.
And then I don't know if you're talking about before or after he's anointed.
I would agree.
He had to be.
I would agree with you.
on the Island of misfit toys.
That's right. That's right. No, I'd agree, but we got to back again. I'm with you. We're trying to get too far down the line. You're right. Especially the island. He was getting honed and trained for being King David, but before he shows up on the battlefield to take out Goliath. And granted, like you said, he's been through some things. He's taken out a lion. He's taken out a bear, and he says that God is going to deliver him. There's that faith we're talking about. Where did that faith, that humility come from?
He had a relationship with God.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's where you were headed, Miss Nancy. So we say that cliche, right? And I'm not trying to say you said something. It's just we all say relationship with God. It's a phrase we use, right? But really, honestly, like we know for a fact, right, that some of his psalms were written while he was out in the field keeping those sheep. Like David sat. Listen to me, young people. Malia, put your phone down. This is like the number one thing I've been saying since I started teaching for this fellowship, right? David focused on, for whatever reason, he focused on the spiritual. He looked to the stars and said, what is man that you are mindful of him? Okay? He, from the very beginning, was like, God's going to take care of me. Maybe he had a memorial. Maybe the lion and the bear thing was him just doing his job protecting the sheep. And he then, from that point, started doing what we're talking about he continued to do for the rest of his life. Praised God and gave him credit for everything. Everything. Even when he does wrong later on in his life, he falls on his face, begs forgiveness. When he loses that first child, he gets up and says, that's what I get. That's what we get. And then moves on and continues to keep praising God the whole way.
He was an overcomer.
But because he was an overcomer, because
Relationship.
he praised God, because he gave God the glory, because he prayed, he probably fasted. I don't know for sure, right? We don't have a whole lot of detail in that sense, but I guarantee you he did do those things that I've been telling us, that that's what we got to do. He got connected to something that was outside of him. Saul did not. Saul depended on the natural. And when the natural was failing him, and when Samuel left him, he was like, I got to go to the other side to get my answers. Boy, guys, that is the testimony of 100 Christians I know. I could list them out for you. There's no power in the church. I'm going to the world. Like,
That's right.
lots of people.
He always knew his source of strength, but he also, accountability, he never blamed anybody else. He always looked inward where he was being led to take accounting, like when the child died.
That's right.
The child was dead.
That's right. But even that, Miss Nancy, I'm saying came from him allowing the Father to teach him. Like God to teach him. Through nature, I guarantee you at this point, he definitely, there was because of the love that he had for Torah, right? I guarantee you there was definitely some point in place in his life where he heard Scripture and was like, memorized a little bit and took it out into the field and said it and got it deep in his soul. But even that seems kind of practical and just sort of, touch, I'm saying beyond that, he just pondered on the fact that God was there for him and for his people, and that he loved us, and that he had to have, because look at what's around me. He delivered him, he protected him, and he continually, what did I read today in Psalm 34? May your praise be continually on my lips. What does Paul say to us believers? Pray without ceasing. Like, I am standing here telling you, I don't do it, but I know it's the answer. So don't think I'm sitting up here preaching at you. I mean, I'm preaching at you, but I'm not standing here being like, here, you better do this. I'm telling you because I read this today and yesterday and the day before and said, oh man, it's come to a crescendo. Am I gonna be the land? Am I gonna be the earth? Am I gonna be Adam? Or am I gonna be something more? Right? Saul was anointed by God. He was created by God, right? But he did not keep his focus on the things above. He kept his focus on the things below, and it's really obvious. Go back and read it. It's just everything is about his earthly realm and how he's going to win. And don't get me wrong, he wants some power, but he doesn't see that power coming from God. He gives credit to the ark.
He didn't want to know God.
He gives credit to a witch, right? I'm not going to go so far as to say he didn't want to know God, because I can't accuse him of that, but I'm going to say this. For whatever reason, in his situation and circumstance, he had some blockage, for sure. And there's the deal. I know believers, again, I'm going to say this, testimonial-wise, I know believers that end up in the same path. They're not doing the horrible things, and they don't even have as much pride as Saul had, right? But they still end up in a place where it's carnal and natural, and it's not spiritual, relationship, love-based. It's not giving credit where credit's due. It's not, we're going to continue to do so. But as we do so, take what I'm talking about here, and I've said this before as we've been talking, I don't want to be Saul, I want to be David. But there's a real key concept of what that means. I want to be focused on him. Not on me, not on my earthly situation or circumstance, right? And I'll be real honest with you guys. I've about killed myself sometimes in my life, including even recently. Like hurt my head, my heart, my mind, and everything around me because I focus on the natural and the temporal. And that is sad because I know better, right? I'm not telling you something new that I don't know already. You guys know, I've been saying it since I've been teaching, right? But I just want you to not I'm not saying don't meditate on it and kind of come up with some points, and think about the comparison, but what I really want you to do is to feel it. I'm not trying to be silly. We're not about to put our fingers together, close our eyes, and cross our legs, nothing crazy like that. I'm just asking you to really, truly feel this that I'm talking about here. And I think it's easy. I think it's real easy for you to be like, I'm right now being very carnal, right? Or I'm right now ignoring carnal things and being spiritual. Focus on, and listen, that's the epistles. I just, in a nutshell, gave you most of the epistles. We're missing a couple of things that get complicated and get difficult, right? And go back and forth and stuff, right? I missed the verses that tell us sin is disobeying the Torah, right? I missed those, and I love those too just as much as any good Messianic Hebrew roots person does, right? But I'm just telling you, that's the summation of it all. I believe that God anointed Saul for this very purpose, to show us natural, carnal only. I'm not trying to say I don't want us to be too heavenly minded. We're no earthly good, but I'm talking about natural, carnal, dependent versus God, spiritual, dependent. And God's spiritual dependency creates purity, 100%. Totally agree.
Saul was concerned about building his own kingdom, and David was always from the get-go concerned about
Building God's kingdom, absolutely, 1%. He was about him.
It goes back to the Tower of Babel. They wanted to make a name for themselves rather than to honor the name of Yahweh.
Becky,
David wanted to honor Yahweh. Saul wanted to honor Saul.
this goes back to the Garden of Eden. I'm with you. You're totally right. They wanted to honor themselves. That's all that, like when we read about Nimrod, regardless of all the fallen angel stuff and everything else, when we read about all those things going on in the days of Noah, what were they doing? Lovers of themselves. What did Yeshua say would happen in the end days? Look, Saul and David is the gospel, right? I mean, it's the gospel. It literally is. It is the full gospel, okay? Not just the salvation piece and God's going to lift me up piece so that I can be me. It's the God's going to lift me up and fill me with his spirit, and now I can be him to the rest of the world all the time, every day, every hour, every minute. Whew, boy. Sorry, I'm just kidding. I'm not really convulsing up here.
What's really scary is you can use his power and never know him. Because it says in the last days they'll say, God, Lord, Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Cast out demons in your name and heal the sick, and he say, get away from me, you workers of iniquity.
I never knew you. And listen, it's just like Israel. And I've seen this my whole entire life in the charismatic Pentecostal church. I've seen very gifted people be very wrong, okay? And I mean like undeniably gifted people be very wrong. And a lot of times people can't handle that. And I'll tell you this, it's simply because it doesn't, the gifts are without repentance. That's in reference to Israel itself, right? Meaning like Israel is Israel, and regardless of how stupid they kept on being, they kept on being used. And we've talked about it, even in Bible studies, they're going to keep on being used, right? Even if it's for natural purposes. Regardless, the point that I'm trying to make here is that those people who were gifted and who had gifts, this is the same exact thing. They became Saul. It becomes about them, their kingdom, their ministry. They don't listen to any counsel. They think they've got it right. They get angry. They get bitter. Next thing you know, they're doing something horrible, cheating on their wife, some crazy stuff, right? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think that it's that they never knew God or, I mean, like in Saul's case, he had like you said, in the beginning, he had a relationship with God. And it says that he broke faith, and that's why, so he did know God, and he, but he didn't. Yeah. And I think when it's talking about,
right, as he was becoming king.
For me, I never knew you. Like, you can read the Torah, understand the Torah, you can read the Bible, but you have to have the relationship aspect of things. And so,
yeah, exactly.
You can recognize the power of God and, understand it, but if you don't have the relationship, you're missing the most important piece there. So, and like Saul, he broke faith. And that's why he died.
He did not. He did not get back to the past. He did not find the passage of the place that God was before. He did not get back to his beginnings. He never went back because I'm going to say this though. Regardless of his in the beginning, the God thing happening for him, I still believe, and I believe I've experienced it. It is because he stopped doing what David did. Broke faith, yes, I agree, but I think the reason why faith was broken, because he started to look to natural things and to himself.
Well, right. I mean, it says he broke faith and consulted a medium.
No, that's right.
And,
Yep.
and it lists it there for you at the end, seeking guidance. He did not seek guidance from the Lord.
Yeah. Yep.
He did several things, and he didn't come back to what he was supposed to.
Yeah, and think about it. If you have stopped praising and worshiping, you have stopped seeking God on a daily basis, if it's not a part of your life and something bad happens to you, what's going to be your natural tendency? Are you going to immediately trust God? No. I'm speaking from experience, guys. You're not going to immediately trust God. You're going to immediately look to yourself, to your circumstance, to your situation. You ain't going to go to him in prayer till it gets bad enough. I'll tell you, that's where I'm at in my life. It's bad enough to where I ain't got no other choice. Like, honestly. And that's where I don't want you guys to be. Okay? I don't want to be there again, ever. Right? So I'm working on making sure I don't end up back in that same place. But that's the key, right? All right. I said we we're going to be short, and look what happened. Man. Okay. Acts chapter 20. So, very next couple of passages, we're coming back to the book of Acts, ladies and gentlemen, from some of the epistles. And we're in some interesting places here, very interesting places. So here we are, chapter 20, verse 1. We've got Saul. He is wanting, listen, so he's celebrating, first of all, he's celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread in Philippi. Uh-oh. So he's in this certain area. He's not in Jerusalem. We can't say he didn't go to Jerusalem for the Passover, but I can pretty much tell you he didn't go to Jerusalem for the Passover. It's a little ways where he's at in all these cities and places where he's traveling. Okay? So he celebrated, though. Here's the key. He was not able to get to Jerusalem for the gospel's sake. So you could point fingers at Shaul and be like, you Torah violator. Right? I'm not going to. But then the very next thing we hear, right, is that he really, well, I wouldn't say the very next thing. We get down here in a couple of verses, and it talks about how he really desired to get back to where he came from, right, to where it all began, and he wanted to get back to Jerusalem for Shavuot, okay? He's like fighting to do so, and we'll talk about a little bit of that fight. But before we get to that, we got this picture. Everybody see my felt board? Okay. Look what's happening here. Pretty much like all of you look most of the time when I'm preaching. Right? Falling asleep over there. Falling asleep. Right? And that's why I don't have any open doors or windows, because I don't want any of you to end up in this situation. All right? Because I don't quite yet have the faith Paul had. Okay? Because this is what happens. Eutychus. Eutychus basically, it says, dies of boredom. All right? It says that there's lights in the room, is real light lit. And here's some interesting key pieces, right? Verse 7 of chapter 20 says, on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, that a lot of the times it's used by Sunday worshipers to say, yeah, look, that's Sunday morning. No, what's the first day of the week? At the beginning of the first day of the week for Jewish people during this time. Saturday night. We're about to hit the first day of the week here in a couple of hours, okay? So Saturday night was the first day of the week for them, right? And that's the whole key to this story. It's Saturday night. They've been worshiping, doing things on Shabbat, probably at a synagogue. They've had 3 different meals. That is a recorded, like, known historical thing that they even did back then. That's not an Orthodox Jewish tradition today, right? So their full bellies are full. They're worshiped out, right? This kid gets sleepy. And he may not have been a kid. It says, a younger man, right? A certain young man, right? He fallen into a deep sleep. And as Shaul was preaching, he was overcome with the sleep and fell down from the 3rd story and was taken up dead. Shaul, say what?
If he was on the 3rd floor, they didn't have any air conditioning.
It's been hot. Hot air rises, right? So he's really sleepy. But you know what? Here we go. We got Shaul, like King David. He ain't focused on the natural. He goes down. He fell upon him and embracing him said, "Trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him." And when Shaul went back up to the upper area, right, the upper chamber, and broken bread and eaten, they talked on until daybreak. So y'all think I'm bad? Till daybreak. So they went from where we were just at when I started and Jared and them started singing, right, all the way till tomorrow morning. So don't get mad at me if we go a little bit over 5. Now, we're not going to today, but I'm saying in the future, all right? Tell all your Baptist friends when they visit and they're like, "Hey, that's too," or any other denomination, right? That's way too long of a service. You direct them to chapter 20, verse 7 of Acts. I'm just kidding. I'm being silly. I'm not really upset at all. So they brought the young man alive to see them off, and all were greatly comforted. So here he is. He's died after Paul bored him to death. They keep talking after he raises him from the dead till in the morning, right? At some point, I would think Paul would learn his lesson, right? And then this young man, alive and well, goes with them to see him off and to say goodbye. All right, so he begins his journey to Jerusalem from where this incident happens in around Philippi. And this is what it says. Shaul decided to sail past Ephesus because he was in a hurry and could not spend the time in Asia, as he earnestly desired, if it were at all possible, to be in Jerusalem for the Feast of Shavuot. Of course, this is one of our points that we make very strongly to those who don't understand how important the feasts are. Okay? So we got two bullets here for our gun of correction, of our modern day sword. One for the hardcore Jewish messianic, you better keep every aspect of Torah perfectly. Shaul was obeying the Holy Spirit. He wasn't in Jerusalem for the big Feast of Weeks, and he wasn't there not Feast of Weeks, unleavened bread and for Passover. Boom! Be quiet, you crazy, mean, overzealous for the law, people. Then we got another bullet for the church crowd when we say, but look how much he wanted to still keep Torah, but not even just keep Torah. He earnestly desired to go back to the place where he was before. Earnestly. All right? So acting like that is not a thing that we should want to do. And I'm not talking about going to Jerusalem. I mean, just paying attention to the days. However you count them, whatever calendar you use, we already have that discussion all the time. It's real important to Shaul. So important, get this. They literally come to him saying, we know you're going to die. And he says, except I know that in every city that Ruach Kodesh testifies that bounds and afflictions await me. He says, but none of these things move me. Neither do I count my life dear to myself, so that I might finish my course with joy, as well as complete the ministry which I received from Messiah Yeshua to testify of the gospel of grace of Yahuwah. So everybody, including these men moved by the Holy Spirit, are telling him, do not go to Jerusalem. And he's saying, I'm going even on my deathbed. So that's how important this was for him to get there for Shavuot. All right? And he says some really good things to them in closing. It's kind of like one of his, how I tell you all the beginnings and the endings of the epistles are really great. He has a conversation with him. They're weeping. They're praying together. They kiss his neck. Everybody's sad because he's going, and he says, I'm going no matter what. The disciples, again, some of the disciples in Syria and Tyre, right, said, to Shaul, who said to Shaul through the Ruach that he should not go up to Jerusalem. He did wait this time a couple of days before he tried to get there, but then they continued on. And here we go. We got another one of these stories, right? When everybody's like, well, when Yeshua came and died and went into heaven, prophecy ceased. So the next day, we who were of Shaul's company departed Ptolemais and came to Caesarea, where we entered into the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the 7, right? And what does that 7 mean, right? He was previously chosen to serve the Gentile believers in Jerusalem, Acts chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. And he was the one who ministered actually specifically to the Samaritans, chapter 8, verses 5 through 13. And he actually was sent to teach the Ethiopian eunuch when he was sent on the way, and we heard that story, right? When he just happens to meet the guy on the road who's happened to read in the passage of Isaiah that's talking about the Messiah dying and being raised again. Right, all that cool stuff. And then he gets beamed up, Scotty, right? Everybody remember that story? Man.
Where are you saying it's talking about Philip again?
Philip was one of the 7 previously chosen. Oh, chapter 21, 8 is where it mentions it. And then Acts 6, 3 through 5. Got it? All right, so he's at his house, right? And they entered his house, right, one of the 7, and stayed with him. He had 4 virgin daughters who prophesied. As we stayed there many days, there came down from Yehuda a prophet named Agabus, right? When he arrived, he took Shaul's sash and bound his hands and feet and said, "Thus said the Ruach Kodesh, so shall the Yehudim at Jerusalem bind the man that owns this sash and shall deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles." When he heard these things, both we and the believers in Caesarea begged him not to go up to Jerusalem. Then Shaul answered, "What do you hope to accomplish by weeping and attempting to break my heart? I am ready not only to be bound, but also to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Master Yeshua, Jesus." When he would not be persuaded, we ceased from exhorting him to do the will of Yahuwah. After those days, we packed our things and went up to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples of Caesarea also went with us, and they brought with them Nason of Cyprus, an old disciple with whom we lodged. That's the end of our portion for today of the apostolic writings. Paul is relentless. He wants to go to Jerusalem, and he wants to. And think about this, all the staying in different places and the stalling on the trip, it's all during the counting. So he was anticipating Shavuot. Probably think about it, he's on day like 30, he's like, "I love you guys, but I'm ready to die. I'm going to Shavuot." Right? Even after they witnessed to him and they told him, this is what's going to happen to the man who, owns this sash. He's going to be bound and delivered to the Gentiles. Shaul said he was ready. It was his time. Till next week for the continuation of the story of Shaul and all the awesome acts of the Holy Spirit, as I like to call the book, the acts of Ruach Kodesh. Okay? Oh, look at that. I finished early. That's early. 45, 47, 48. It's early. It's not 5 o'clock or 5:10. Yeah, I'm gonna pray real quick for our closing prayer before we say our blessing. Father, we praise you. We praise you, and we want to have a heart that praises you like the writer of most Psalms praised you, always and continually, daily, and how they praised you at the tabernacle during the reign of King David. We really want to be connected to you, to the source, so that we can have all the attributes of your Spirit, of your Son, and that we can walk out your kingdom as we go to all of our friends and our families, but even for ourselves, Father, for our own peace that peace that passes all understanding, for your will to be clearly seen in our lives, for us to just go up to the mountain and have you teach us your ways. We want that. I'm proclaiming that that's what we, as Olive Tree Fellowship, as myself, my family, as the families here represented today with us, we desire to praise you and worship you all the days of our life, and we don't want to let go of that. And we ask that you just continue to bless us, teach us. We invite the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, into every area of our life. Convict us, show us, teach us, all those things that are the promise of the Father, and prepare us. Prepare us for our future as a group of people together. Show us what we need to be doing well beforehand. Clothe us with that power that would allow us to walk out the same walk that all of the followers of Yeshua did, as we read in the early church, and as some have done over throughout human history. Strengthen us and guide us. That is our prayer. And protect us from all evil. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Oh, so old. So old. All right. Yevarekeka Yahuwah v'nishmereka Yaher Yahuwah panavaleka v'kuneka Yesa Yahuwah panavaleka v'yasem leka Shalom. Yahuwah bless you and keep you. May Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of the Prince of all peace, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Even so, come quickly, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Uh-oh. Do we not have somebody running the computer? Okay, I got it.
Shabbat Shalom.